Greetings, degenerates. St. Michael here, and nothing is true. Everything is permitted. Now, I don't usually talk video games on here because, in all honesty, I'm not an avid gamer. I tend to stay within what I like to play, which is mainly Grand Theft Auto and the myriad of party games I tend to play with, my community. For those who are privy to the Gulf City streams, you'll know Pummel Party, Among Us, even Phasmophobia. But if there's one series I'm a massive fan of, or at least was, that is Assassin's Creed. I have multiple hoodies, jackets. I even have this necklace here, which I had for so long, you can see it wore off and broke. I used to have the ring. I'm a big fan of the series. That being said, I dipped out after Syndicate. I loved Assassin's Creed Black Flag. In fact, Black Flag is one of my all-time favorite games, up there with Arkham City, GTA, Vice City, San Andreas, obviously. But I loved Black Flag. I was a big fan of 3. I liked the Ezio era. Obviously, it's great. But I dipped out after Syndicate because the game that once had its first trailer, they had a crossbow in the back of Altair. They removed it from the actual game because I realized, the setting that we're having this in, which is like the 1100s, they didn't have crossbows yet, so we have to remove that. They prided themselves on somewhat of historical accuracy, even though they're dealing with some sort of, gods and really. I hated when they got out of the animus and into the real world. Just stay in the historical part. I hated that they went from that to having the characters swing around like Spider-Man. I was baffled at how retarded that is. I've heard a lot of people say that Valhalla was pretty good. I didn't play any of those. I didn't play the new. I don't even remember Mirage. Anyone remember that? The one between Valhalla and Shadows? Yeah, that existed. But apparently, Ubisoft canceled a Civil War-era Assassin's Creed. Now, the timing of that is a bit suspicious, but if that was true, and let's just say, for all intents and purposes, that it is, I think if this was a different era in gaming, that would be badass. Because, as a fan of the series, I know there's been Black Assassin Creed characters that were the main character. Now not a mainline title I'm aware of, Liberation and Freedom Cry, but the reality is a lot of the characters that were Assassin's Creed weren't all whiteys, okay? But that could have been really cool. A Civil War era, imagine if you had the male protagonist, one was a Union a supporter, one was a Confederate supporter. You could have done a lot with that. And they said that they were going to be fighting the KKK. My first thought was there's no fucking way in hell they would do an accurate KKK because, well, the KKK were Democrats, and the Democrats were massive supporters of the South. In fact, they controlled most of the South. So the reality is, if they did make this game, the KKK would just be a stand-in for MAGA Trumpers. Again, let's say this is true. This comes from that Park Place. Ubisoft reportedly canceled Civil War-era Assassin's Creed game amid Yasuke backlash and political fear. That is utter horseshit, because the backlash that Shadows got, and let me actually back up a bit, because again, as an Assassin's Creed fan, there is one setting that we have been begging for years. And I went back years and years ago talking to friends and shit. I hope that they would do a Japan set game in feudal Japan, but man, they're going to make those ninjas, they're not going to be real accurate. 'Cause real ninjas were more spy, less kung fu karate. They were more espionage than assassin. But it still would have made a great idea and an amazing premise that we fans have been begging for years. And this was the title. Like, when I first heard Assassin's Creed Shadows, ignoring everything that's going on in games, I was like, finally something to pull me back into the series. Finally something to make me part with my dollar and buy an Assassin's Creed game for the first time since Syndicate. Because this is what we've been asking for. We have finally been getting what we've been clamoring forever. And they pushed DEI bullshit. Because, of course, they put a black character. Now, keep in mind, Assassin's Creed, you never play as a historical character. You play as a made-up character who interacts with historical figures. Yasuke is a real person. He was a real character. There is debate on whether or not he was a samurai. Now, whether he was or wasn't would have just been an honorary title. He would have not been a legitimate samurai. He was a sword holder. He was a bodyguard. And the really weird part about making him in this game was a 6-foot-tall black guy is going to play a stealth operation in Japan. A 6-foot-tall black guy playing a stealth operation in modern Japan would still stand out. Seemingly going to get worse or better depending on your point of view, especially with the recent Prime Minister's words that we will be more nationalistic, and all power to him. But in feudal Japan, a 6-foot-tall black guy is going to stand out. How is this going to work? It just made no sense. Every decision Ubisoft made was worse and worse, and everything I heard about it made me realize, yeah, they're not getting my money. This will tank badly. But what was this so-called Civil War era game? Well, Ubisoft has reportedly canceled an Assassin's Creed game set in post-American Civil War Reconstruction era, according to a report from GameFile. You gotta take that with a little bit of salt, considering the author is kind of a left-leaning nutcase. The project was scrapped in 2024 after the company faced backlash over the Black Samurai and I don't mean this for the Park Place. They are good people. But that is not why the game got backlash. At least not for the main reason. The reality is it didn't get it. Oh, we don't like black characters in Assassin's Creed. Like, the first fucking character in the Assassin's Creed franchise was an Arab. We don't care. Again, go back to Liberation. Go back to Freedom Cry. Hell, go back to Assassin's Creed 3. Connor was half native. And depending on your view of history, Italians weren't considered white, at least not in America, for a very long time. So there's Ezio. It wasn't because he was black. It's because it didn't make sense. And this not only pissed off Western gamers, this pissed off Japan as a country. Like, the backlash for the Black Cleopatra, where Netflix got sued by the entire country of Egypt. The entire nation of Japan told them to go fuck themselves. And it wasn't helped by the fact that the Tory Gate, which is it's a big part of Japanese culture. If you're making a game that respects different cultures, try and keep it historically and try to be cultural. Let's not be woke and DEI, but there is a point where you do have to be culturally respective. And their statue for this game, because they always put in a statue in their collector's edition, was of the characters on a broken Tory Gate, a specific Tory Gate, which was damaged during the bombing of World War II. The bombing I actually don't know if it was the Nagasaki or the Hiroshima. Regardless, that would be like taking an Assassin's Creed game that you're going to say, oh, we're going to set it in New York. And you know what statue we're going to make? Yeah, the Twin Towers. Really? Really? This is what you do? So that was what the backlash was about. It had nothing to do with the fact that it was a black character, other than the fact that the character was only pushed because he was black in an environment that made no fucking sense. So, the Assassin's Creed Shadows grew nervous about the political climate in the United States. No, that's not even close. The decision shows that Ubisoft has learned the wrong lesson. They haven't learned anything. Instead of realizing players were tired of identity-driven storytelling and virtue signaling, leadership apparently concluded that audiences simply can't handle complex topics. The result is a company running from its own self-inflicted wounds, and it's being bought up. I mean, after the Shadows failed, then you can see here how bad the numbers are. Tencent, which is a Chinese company, gobbled up more than it already had in Ubisoft, buying up more of their IPs, not Assassin's Creed. So it kind of makes it think like these companies are tanking so that China can buy them up. I'm not pushing anything, but that's just wrong. Ubisoft cancels a game no one wants. Okay, let's be fair. I don't think that that's true. Let's say this was a proper game world even 15 years ago. A game where you're in post-Civil War America fighting the KKK. I mean, they put a game in Revolutionary War America, so it's not like you can't. But again, the problem is the KKK is not going to be who the KKK were in ancient times, and they're certainly not going to use the language. Are you kidding me? The snowflakes of nowadays, they would dare record the fucking words of an actual Klansman. No fucking way. It'd be there's already trigger warnings for Assassin's Creed games. Those little pussies be like, oh my god, he said the word. He's a fucking Southern Democrat. Of course he's gonna say the word, you pussy. Sources, and these are anonymous sources, told GameFile that Assassin's Creed Civil War concept would have followed a formerly enslaved man who joined the Assassin's Brotherhood after gaining his freedom, traveling west before returning to the post-war South to fight for justice in a conflict that would, among other things, see him confront the emergence of the Ku Klux Klan. Again, in concept, I don't hate this. It's just we know their execution would be piss poor at best. 5 current and former employees said the project had early approval before executives killed it. I don't think so. This game was supposedly taking in development at the same time as Shadows under a similar code name. The idea most likely was this is something that they liked, and they just kind of took these two ideas and, Frankensteined them together. Like, how do we get a black assassin? I know, let's take a game people are wanting and force our diversity into it. Like, Bill Cosby, whether you want to or not. And fans said no, because it's bullshit. One insider summarized the reason as being too political in a country, too unstable. No, it's because they knew it would fucking suck. And they wouldn't get brownie points. Because, again, a black assassin in a setting that makes sense for a black assassin to be, oh, we can't have that. Let's put a black assassin in feudal Japan. Okay. Now, for a second, let's take a look at 2 examples of how this can be done piss poor or correctly. Remember, not too long ago, Disney made a Black Little Mermaid? How'd that do? Well, it drowned. But let's look at a movie from 2009, The Princess and the Frog. Now, obviously, The Princess and the Frog is a story that goes back many, many years. The thing is, they took that skeleton of a story, put it in the American South in Louisiana, and set it with characters that would make sense for the time and for the location. Predominantly black characters. No one had a problem. No one gave a shit. It's when you took a remake of a classic tale you guys made famous and you just fucking blackfaced it. So you can do these things and make them work. It's just these people have no idea, no talent, or desire to do it correctly. That explanation might sound like caution, but it misses the point entirely. Ubisoft didn't pull the plug because of political instability. It pulled it because the project was political from the start. Yeah, it was obviously going to be bullshit. No one was asking for a lecture about race wrapped in an Assassin's Creed branding. Players have been asking for historical escapism, not another attempt at rewriting history through modern ideological filters. The Yasuke problem. Ubisoft panic over the Civil War project stems directly from the reaction to Assassin's Creed Shadows when the company revealed Yasuke as one of the playable leads. Fans immediately noticed how far the franchise had strayed from its own traditions. They have been straying from that for years. I would say again, I dipped out after Syndicate when I saw the fucking amazing Spider-Man flying around, but Historically, Assassin's Creed protagonists were original characters who interacted with historical figures. Yes, Shadows broke that pattern by placing players directly in the shoes of an historical figure whose story has been stretched to fit modern talking points. Again, they could have broken the rule and made you play a real character. That still wouldn't have made fans particularly excited, but again, they did it for the wrong reasons. Ubisoft marketed the move as authentic representation. No, it was DEI representation. But fans saw it for what it was, corporate virtue signaling disguised to score headlines rather than tell a compelling story. It was all about points. DEI points probably to get funding because, again, these companies don't give a fuck. The backlash was loud because it exposed what longtime fans, I included, already suspected. Ubisoft isn't focused on immersive historical storytelling anymore. It's focused on image management. Yes. When Assassin's Creed Shadows was criticized, CEO, not even going to try, publicly claimed Ubisoft's goal is not to push any specific agenda. That is an absolute fucking lie and blatant utter horseshit. Insisting they make games for everyone to enjoy. No, they make games for no one. They make games for a small group of people to put flags in their bio who don't have jobs or money to buy their games. And they chased away fans that do have money. That line rings hollow when the same leadership keeps steering creative teams towards projects built around modern ideological themes. The company has a long track record of pretending neutrality while chasing political relevance. Far Cry 5 mocked supposed American extremism. Watch Dogs Legion took aim at nationalism and surveillance. And now Ubisoft flirted with rewriting post-Civil War America before realizing it might actually have to defend its own message. Yes, because let's say, again, for all intents and purposes, this is true, and they really were going to think about doing that. They would actually have to look at the Democratic Party when in this time for... It's one of the reasons why you'll never see an Assassin's Creed set in World War II. Plus, it would kind of be weird. It's because they couldn't be historically accurate. Because they wouldn't be able to put in place ideas like FDR wanting to work with Nazis, or FDR having internment camps for American soldiers or for American citizens that just happen to be Japanese. They wouldn't do that. And to put a game set in post-Civil War, a war that was basically speared on by retards on both sides, but the Democrats wanting to hold on to bonded human beings, and the KKK, who were a militant arm of the Democrat Party. There's no way they're going to be honest and, focus on their messaging. They have to do one or the other. They would have to make, again, the KKK as some right-wing MAGA people, which is ahistorical. Fear, not principle. According to GameFile's report, Ubisoft's franchise also played a role in the cancellation after the disastrous 2024 filled with delays, weak sales, and falling stock prices. This doesn't even include Ubisoft's disaster with Star Wars, with Outlaws. I don't even know what it was called. That was fucking shit. It was buggy as fuck and it was terrible. The idea of releasing a politically charged story about race relations in the middle of America's crucial or cultural divide became too much for the company already struggling. We're not in a... Okay, you could say, yes, we are in a cultural divide. It's not against white and black. It's against sane and evil. Like, this was so... Plus, didn't they make him gay in the story, too? Not the only katana he wants to wield. Fucking wrong kind of sword fighting. Ubisoft's identity crisis. The Assassin's Creed Civil War cancellation is just the latest example of Ubisoft not understanding the audience. Yep. Fans want deep gameplay, historical intrigue, and creative freedom, not corporate messaging about race, gender, and politics. Yes, just give me a fucking game where I can go into the past, swing some swords around, and fucking have fun. I'm sick of this crap. Sick of it. I want a game where I can go into it. Like, I want an Assassin's Creed game where I can go into... Well, I wanted one where I can go into feudal Japan, take a katana or an odachi, and fucking hack and slash and have a fucking great time. But they couldn't fucking get out of their own goddamn way. And more Asian hate, apparently. Ubisoft's leadership is now paralyzed by fear and stupidity. It insists its games are for everyone, they're for no one, while designing them for social media applause, which doesn't amount for anything. They can get all the likes on Twitter they want, no one's buying. It talks about authenticity, they used to be, while rewriting history to fit a modern narrative, and then blames players, which is always a great strategy, for instability when the real instability is inside the company itself. What's the bottom line? I don't know, but I think Stone Cold told you. Ubisoft didn't cancel a bold idea. That's debatable. Again, I think it could have worked, but not in today's world. It canceled yet another politically motivated misfire before it could explode. And again, this is even if the game was true. After years of scandals, poor management, and tone-deaf storytelling, the company seems determined to alienate both its players and developers. If Ubisoft wants to save Assassin's Creed, and I don't know if it's really possible, it doesn't need more representation or sensitivity consultants. Just get rid of HR in general. Those are just rooms for women to bitch and complain about jokes. It needs to remember what made the series iconic: slashing, killing, and history. In the first place, compelling storytelling, yes. Solid gameplay, yes. A story players actually want to experience. Are you surprised by Ubisoft's cancellation of this game? Sound off in the comments. If it was true, I'm not super surprised that they canceled the game. Here's the thing, I'm not surprised they canceled any Assassin's Creed after the backlash from Shadows. I think Shadows is most likely the last Assassin's Creed game. If at all, just under Ubisoft. If it gets sold off to Tencent, maybe they make one. But I think Shadows is it. I think Shadows is another in a long list of IPs I and many others will never see the light of day again because they have been long dead and buried. And you know what? I think it's time Assassin's Creed goes back to the shadows, goes back in hiding. Because modern gaming is dog shit. Well, anyways, God bless, and may demons fear when you wake in the morning.